Hello, BookTube. Well, we're back down here in puppy territory for an ongoing library tour. I was looking at these books just before I started the camera and realized that even though I started this library tour, this bottom shelf, for those of you joining us late, this is a bottom shelf crammed with mass market paperbacks, 3 deep, for many rows. And I'm just realizing as I looked at these books, this is an enormous undertaking that I started just on a lark. This is a vast amount of books. So I don't know how long it's going to go on. We'll just continue until we finish. It's been a morning of shocks and upsets here at Hyde Cottage. The first one starting right at dawn when my puppy, my little miniature schnauzer Frida, she was sound asleep, sort of jammed against my hip in bed, and then she woke up, she stretched, she figured I still don't feel like going outside, so she walked up to the top of the bed where I was finishing off the night's reading. I was propped up on pillows in bed. And she sort of came between me and the book like a cat and laid down on my chest to resume sleeping. And she's done that before, but for some reason this morning it flashed across my mind the ordeal that was when my Basset Hound Lucy used to do it. She used to do it all the time. She liked sleeping on my chest. But when she did it, your life flashed before your eyes. It was 85 pounds of flatulence and insanity that was just sort of parked on top of you, and you couldn't move, and you could feel your ribs sort of bowing under the weight. But Frida doesn't weigh anything at all. I barely noticed. It was a weird moment. And the other shocker moment was that my phone up and died. I'm pretty sure forever. It looks like it just is. Looks like it's just not working at all anymore. It's a phone. It's an iPhone 5 that one of you very kindly sent me when I put my old phone through the wash. This time, not a drop of water, nothing wrong. It was sitting on the nightstand. I think it just died. So now I have to figure out whether or not the tech guys at the place I go to can save the SIM card. Whether or not they can take the card out of it, and then I'll have to get another phone. Who knows? Who knows how that will work? But anyway. We're on to the books here. So we're just going to do this a stack at a time until we finish sometime in 2021. So the first one is a cute little reprint of The Life of William Shakespeare by Nicholas Rowe. It's from 1709. It's the first real attempt to write a Shakespeare biography, and it's the first real attempt to write Shakespeare mythography as well. This is, when you talk about something poisoning the well, this is the poison. This is what poisoned the well of Shakespeare biographies and scholarship, because Rowe hauls in every single myth that he can think of, anything that anybody's ever told him or thinks they might have once heard. It's very good reading. I was very pleased that, I forget, this still has the pub sheet in it. This was I don't actually, Independent Publishers Group? I don't actually remember who specifically brought this out, but somebody brought it out as a reprint, as a standalone reprint on its own. It shouldn't be here, of course. It shouldn't. A lot of the things that I'm finding in this tour shouldn't be where they are. This should be over with my biographies. It should be with, or close to. I think I have 2 Shakespeare biographies. It should be with them, but it's not. It's over here. So clearly a grand reorganization is in order when all this is done. But let's see here. Oh, great. This is the old pocket edition of While Rome Burns by Alexander Woolcott, who was a pundit or a commentator, the town crier. He was a public intellectual and wit of a kind that we don't really have today, because the listening public has sort of splintered everywhere. He once had a massive audience just for his wool-gathering stories. And this is sort of a collection of those, made in one of these great old pocket paperbacks that they're just indestructibly made. And I don't know why I have this. I don't know why I've kept it. I guess because I'm waiting for either a Penguin Classic collected, While Rome Burns, and a bunch of his. You could collect all of his stuff in one volume. It wouldn't be a very big volume. Or maybe there's a Library of America volume. That would be nice. I'm holding on to these because I do occasionally get the yen to reread him, and that's the only form I've ever found him in. So what is next here? Oh, great. Okay. Well, as you all already know, that this is Star Trek territory. I don't know why, but all of my Star Trek books seem to be down here. Maybe because most of them are mass markets. And this is one we've seen already. This is Federation by Judith and Gar Reeves Stevens, and it's This is a newer reprint paperback. Doesn't have Kirk and Picard on the cover. Instead, it has this sort of amorphous thing of a hand reaching for the star. And the reason for that is what I alluded to when I was describing the book in an earlier part of this library tour, which is that although the book has a plot in which a time anomaly allows Kirk and Picard to almost meet, the bulk of it is the story of the founding of the Federation and all the people involved. So that a cover like this actually does make sense. It's not just, artsy-fartsy falderall. A large part of the book has nothing to do with either the interesting starship captain or the boring one. And as I've said, I think I've mentioned this a couple of times, and I think I've held this up in a couple of videos, I highly recommend it as a Star Trek novel. Oh, wow, okay. All right, this is an old reinforced Penguin mass market paperback of The Natural History of Selborne by Gilbert White, who was a small-town pastor who loved nature, was passionate about nature, and included his natural history observations day by day in letters that he wrote. And the book made of those letters, it's hard to describe how charming this is, except if you know that it is, because if you look at its print history, you look at this book, if you know nothing about it, you think, oh. But if you look at its print history, you're suddenly seeing figures that rival, and even in some cases, in some ways, surpass that of the Bible. So you know that I'm not the only one that it struck a chord with. It's utterly delightful. I don't know why I've kept this one. I know that this is a perfect example of what a lot of the books in this library tour represent. This is a perfect example of a case where I'm saving this, even though I know that out there somewhere is a version of this book that I want to keep. Not buried down on a shelf, but up on a real shelf with real books. I don't know what it would be. With Gilbert White, you kind of want it to be illustrated, and so Penguin Classics, a big black spine, Penguin Classics trade paperback, probably wouldn't be. But there have been 80 million editions of this thing. The only reason that I haven't seen 80 million editions of it at the Brattle here in Boston is because people don't give them up. So I'll have to keep an eye out. I mean, I do, in the back of my mind, keep an eye out for a nice illustrated edition of The Natural History of Selborne. I haven't found one yet. What's next here? Oh, okay. All right, this is an author we've seen before. We haven't seen this book. This is S.M. Stirling. This is A Taint in the Blood. Can't imagine what drew my eye to it, but this is not. He wrote the series of books called The Change, which we've seen a few on this channel, about a sudden stop of technology, where it takes place in the contemporary world of Pacific Northwest, when all of a sudden all higher technology stops. Everything basically higher than a wheel and a lever stops working, and what happens to society when that happens. This is completely different. It's a totally different series. It's contemporary vampires, cool contemporary sultry vampires. I don't know why. The guy must be a workaholic. but I read the first one. This is in one of those larger paperbacks, one of those taller paperback editions, premium editions. I read it and liked it. I think probably because I like S.M. Stirling. I probably like his narrative tone and could read him doing anything. I don't think I have any of the other books, though. I'm not even sure if the Shadow Spawn series has continued. Probably it has. He strikes me as a multi-book guy. Okay. All right, this next one is something last time or a time before we saw. Daw Publishers used to do a whole series of yellow-spined paperbacks. They were absolutely ubiquitous in the spinner racks of bookstores and whatnot. And in used bookstores that have any kind of science fiction representation, you'll still see them in their yellow vast multitudes. And this is one of those, one of my all-time favorites. This is Mention My Name in Atlantis. By John Jakes, the author of The Bastard, the author went on to have a huge career and do all kinds and kinds of things. This is a parody of Conan the Barbarian. This is instead of Conan the Cimmerian, this is Conax the Chimerical, and he's in Atlantis and bumbles his way through one misadventure after another, and eventually, Flashman style, ends up causing the sinking of Atlantis. And it's hilarious. It's a send-up of Robert E. Howard style sword and sorcery fantasy, and it's done really well. I haven't read it in a long time. I probably should. And what's next here? Oh, okay. Oh, great. All right. I don't know what this is doing down here. Okay, this is the Journeys of McGil Fain by Kevin O'Donnell. This is book number 4, which is Cliffs, with a great cover. And this is a great series. The Journeys of McGil Fain is a great series. It never went any higher than book 4, as far as I know. Kevin O'Donnell just stopped writing it. But it's terrific. Absolutely terrific. The McGil Fain, our hero, is a flinger, which is they're a group of people it's set in the future, and flingers are a group of people who can, as their name implies, teleport up to a certain amount of weight in people or raw matter or whatever across certain distances. They're human teleportation nodes. And not everyone has the ability, and they have to go to an academy and learn how to control it and what its precise nature is. And they are, of course, extremely wealthy. They're extremely sought after. There aren't many of them per capita in the sentient civilization. So these are the adventures of one flinger called McGil Fain, who in the first book uncovers a deadly conspiracy, and it sets him apart from all the other flingers. And also, another thing that sets him apart is that when he was a little baby, he was swallowed whole by an extraterrestrial gastropod who may or may not be working on behalf of the far-being and Rex Glarin, meaning that McGil Fain may or may not be that hoariest of all science fiction cliches, the chosen one. But as you can tell from my description, this is high comedy. These books they're dramatic, and they're very tense, and they're beautifully written. But they have an ongoing thread of high comedy that is really appealing. So if you're in a used bookstore and you see, you have to read it from the first one forward. You couldn't pick up Cliffs and make any sense out of it, I don't think. But if you see the first one, which is called Caverns, and which I'm sure is going to turn up on this library tour, considering the Gibbons, I strongly recommend it. It's really, really good stuff. It's, of course, never going to be reprinted. No one's ever heard of it. But if you find it, you're in for a treat. And what's next? Oh, okay. All right. We've seen this before. God, I must have 10 copies of this thing. This is Dies the Fire by S.M. Stirling, the aforementioned S.M. Stirling. This is the first book of the Change novels, in which, in the Pacific Northwest and everywhere else in the world, a sudden flash causes all technology to stop working. And what would happen if that happened is the underlying hypothetical of these books. I mean, he follows 3 groups of people, 1 group of bad guys and 2 groups of good guys. Frida, don't do that. Leave that alone. But he also looks at the larger question. What would happen to society, even semi-agrarian society? He picks an area of the Pacific Northwest, the Willamette Valley, that isn't particularly urbanized, and makes a point of saying, has all of his characters say, that the very urbanized centers became death zones right away. People were, 30 stories up off the ground in elevators that didn't work. There was no food production. There was nothing at all. And also the implication is that urbanized environments have trained their inhabitants to be just expectant of help, that people would just wait for the situation to fix itself and thereby wait too long. Whereas the key that saves our good guys in the first book is that they don't wait. They don't wait. There's one ex-soldier and one barista, one bar singer, and both of them decide, we've got to get away from any kind of city, not just a large city, but any kind of city, and we've got to assume this is permanent. And it turns out that decision saves their lives, because it turns out to be true. And the people that they meet, a lot of people they meet along the way, didn't make that decision. They just waited and have become increasingly desperate. And it's, again, as you can tell from that synopsis, it's hypnotically good reading. It really is. Let's see what the next... Oh, no. Oh, no. All right, we're back to Star Trek. And we're also back to codification Star Trek. This is pre-canon Star Trek. This is by Sandra Mashak and Myrna Culbreth, two wonderful old Star Trek fans. This is the Prometheus design. As you can always tell in the Star Trek novels where in the continuity roughly you're falling by the uniforms. Those are the uniforms of the first movie. And that's where it is. That's roughly where we are. And this is about an invading intellect, but it's about a lot of other things too. It has a bad guy, a series of bad guys, but it also has a weird new character, a Vulcan named Savage, Savage. And the point that Sondra Marshak and Myrna Culberth are trying to make with Savage is, what would we get if we got a real Vulcan? A quote-unquote real Vulcan. We're all used to Mr. Spock. But Mr. Spock is comparatively very young as a Vulcan, and he's only half Vulcan. And Sondra Marshak and Myrna Culberth wanted to give us a Vulcan who was all Vulcan. A Vulcan who was 200 years old, had been trained in martial arts, military arts, philosophy that whole time. So, in other words, a Vulcan who was almost as old as the Federation, and still in the prime of his life. And it's fascinating. And there are some great debates in this book about the Federation, about what the Federation is, and what it should be, and whatnot. Sorry about the background noise. That's the Hyde Cottage's heating coming on, but unfortunately, the grill, the grate, whatever for the heater unit down by the floor, I think needs a thorough cleaning, and it hasn't had one, so it sounds like an aircraft carrier going on. But you'll just have to concentrate on the prize. But this is, I don't know how to describe old Star Trek fiction. It's not what you're used to if you've read any Star Trek. If you've read things like Federation, you're not going to be ready for something like this, but you'll love it. Especially if you're a fan of the original show. You'll love it. And then, what have we got next here? Oh, goodness gracious. Okay. All right. Well, this is the first book in a series. The series actually went to 5 or 6 books. It's ancient Roman historical fiction. This is called Barba the Slaver. Can't imagine what attracted my eye to it. It's by Dale Forrest. It's possible that Dale Forrest is a pseudonym. And it's really thin. They're all really thin. I wonder if they're all listed in here. Hazel the Slave, Brotan the Breeder, Gracchus the Centurion, Carissa the Vestal Virgin. They were clearly tossed off by someone with more than a passing familiarity with Roman history, who maybe wanted to make a quick buck on the on the lurid side of historical fiction. There's some hanky-panky and lean descriptions, and I don't know. I can't really recommend them. If you're looking for historical fiction, you don't want tossed off stuff by somebody who's not only a hack, but a hack who's working under a pseudonym. I ask you, who does that? But I found it fun. Well, let's see. What's next here? Oh, goodness gracious. Okay. All right, this is a novel by Rutledge Ethridge called Brother John. Can't imagine what attracted me to it. But this is military science fiction, part of a series of his called The Duelists. Very lean. Lots of good characters. It's actually not a bad book. It's just, I mean, obviously it's a trifle. I'm not 100% sure why I kept it. I mean, I might reread it someday. I'm sure it never appeared in hardcover. I'm sure it never appeared in trade paperback. I'm sure it'll never be reprinted. I'm sure that this is its existence as a book. So I guess if I want to reread it, I have a copy. Okay, the next one is something we've seen before, even in this library tour. This is The Best of Cordwainer Smith. All of his great short stories, most of which are set in the world of the instrumentality of mankind, a group of telepathic, all-knowing oligarchs who rule this future setting of Earth, and have a great sway over the events of the interconnected galaxy, including the world in Australia, which is the name of Cordwainer Smith's great novel. I love his short stories. They are so good. They are so good. I don't know what modern science fiction fans know of him. Probably not anything. I would like to think that in any science fiction anthology, his story, Scanners Live in Vain, would be reprinted. But maybe not. So I, like I've mentioned in a couple of these videos, when I see a copy of this, I grab it. Because I'm not going to see copies of it forever, and I don't think I'm ever going to see it in any other format. I don't think Cordwainer Smith is going to be remembered. So I grab these when I can. What's next here? Oh, okay. All right, we've seen this before. This is Storm of Wings by M. John Harrison. Like I said, like with these other books, when I see it, I grab it. Because I don't know when I'm not going to see it. This is one of his Viriconium novels. set in the late afternoon cultures, the city of Viriconium is all of its former selves, is none of its former selves, only vaguely remembers yesterday morning, but is also millennia old. And we learn all of the neighborhoods, and we learn some of the regular characters, but some of it might not be real. None of it might carry over to the next book, or it might be oddly changed. It's a trip, as we used to say. well worth your time. There is no one particular place to start reading Viriconium novels. Don't let that volume 2 fool you. Pick any Viriconium novel that you find. There was a recent one-volume anthology that will work just fine, but if you're looking at paperbacks and you see A Storm of Wings or Viriconium Nights or The Pastel City, grab anything you find and read it. You will love it. And then what else? Oh, okay, all right. Boy, I have a lot of doubles in this. This is going to be a doubles tour, really. This is, again, something we've seen probably twice on this library tour alone. This is the Golden Book of Birds. This is American Birds. It's a little handbook that has beautiful paintings of each bird, plus a little information and their distribution. And a Schnauzer update. What is it? Little girl, you have a million toys. You have a window to look out, and you have actual food on the floor. But you have to be here. The bride at every wedding, and the corpse at every funeral. Why don't you go somewhere else until I'm finished with this video? There you go. Like I said at the beginning of the video, it's a great change from a Basset Hound who only rarely woke up. Anyway, this is a wonderful thing. It's, again, gone completely. But if you see it at a used bookstore and you're interested in birds, you have to have it. You have to have it. And then the last book for this time around. Oh my. Okay. All right. This is another author who's completely gone. He's completely forgotten. He's terrific. I highly recommend him. Everything he wrote. But especially this, his masterpiece. This is The Blue-Eyed Shan by Stephen Becker. A novel about an expatriate in the wilds of... let me read you the beginning here. In the wilds of Asia. The tame Wa are like pie dogs. They will slink and snarl and grin for a bone. But the wild Wa dwell high up on the mountain and smile at no man. Their villages are set in swales and dingles, tiny valleys off the ridges, and the entrances at either end are planted with dense, thorny hedge, and the way in or out is crooked and winding. It was not always so. When the rifle came to these hills, men with swords, knives, and even crossbows had to change their ways. No rifle can see through a wild Wa hedge, and no bullet can wend the mazy way. It just goes on from there. It's incredible. He is an incredible writer of intelligent adventure yarns, deeply textured and intelligent adventure yarns, which isn't as easy to do as it sounds. Almost nobody can do it, and almost nobody's ever been able to do it like this. I'm thinking of something like, for instance, Shogun by James Cavell, where it's clearly, a two-fisted adventure yarn. That's clearly its raison d'etre. That's clearly its whole motivation. And yet, it's extremely literate and extremely dense, and it repays rereading, all that sort of thing. Only the Good Luck Fairy smiled on James Cavell and not on Stephen Becker. So all of his books are out of print and will probably remain that way. And that's a shame. So if you see this, or the Red Bandit, or his great Civil War novel, When This War Is Over, grab them. You'll be very happy that you did. And there you go. That is another stack from puppy territory. So I'll wrap this up for now before it gets too long, and I'll be back soon. Thank you, BookTube.